Welcome to Breakdown, the podcast series that breaks down all the crime and punishment news, but it does so with a twist. So today we're going to be breaking down an article from The Guardian. And as you can see here, the headline is Children in Care Raises Risk of Entering English Youth Justice System Eightfold. Now this is news that's covering a significantly huge data research project that was undertaken by Katy Hunter and I believe Claire Fitzpatrick, who's his friend and colleague, and they found that looking at children that were born between 1996 and 1999, that children that were care experienced, 33% of those have entered the youth justice system as a result of a caution or conviction, against 4% of the general population. Now, when this conversation arises, it's always quite interesting to me because I fall into this cohort of being a child that was removed from family and placed in the care system for a period of time, and I'm also a young person that spent several years in and out of prison. Now, when this conversation arises, as you can see here, it does trigger, rightly so, a conversation for some care experienced people who believe that these overemphasis on these negative outcomes for care experienced people, particularly around criminality, can be stigmatising, and also it's not telling a full picture. Now, I thought what I'll do is I'll talk to you a little bit about my practice experience, and then I can hand over to you so you can put some comments in the comments section after you've watched this video, and hopefully you can contribute and give me your view and your perspective on this quite complicated matter. But I believe sometimes we can be talking about two different things. So our children, and as it was outlined by Katy Hunter, who did the research, sometimes overly criminalised when they come into the care system for things that they might not be criminalised for if they lived in a family. That's historically absolutely been true. And we've seen a reduction of that, or at least in my time in Leeds, for example, when we had the Layman review that highlighted this issue, we've seen a reduction or a different approach to how we worked with young people in the care system, particularly in residential homes. So that's absolutely true. But does that explain the disproportionate number? So we know that 25%, so if you're walking down a prison corridor, for example, if you knock on 4 doors, one of those individuals, well, they'll be doubled up in a cell, to be honest with you, but one of every 4 people in prison have experienced care. So what sits behind that? And sometimes when we put this data out there, some people interpret it that it's care, being in care is a causal factor, when it's actually a correlating factor, and I'll explain my perspective on why that is from practice. So when I became the child looked after specialist, what I wanted to do is look at the children that we'd worked with that had been in care, not that had been convicted or that come through to the youth justice system, that went to custody between the time of 2014 to 2019. Now this came as no surprise to me because I'd worked with these children and I knew these children's background quite well. But I wanted to know what other things had been going on beside the fact that they'd been in care. So what other factors, experiences had they gone through? And interestingly, there were 3 key factors that I believe that were the most significant drivers as opposed to just being in the care system. So the first one was that all the children, bar one, had come into care after 8, most of them as teenagers. Now that's quite significant because when you think about why people behave in certain ways, the values that they have, the experiences that they have, the way they see themselves in the world is often really set. Obviously it can change, but it is quite set by the time a child gets to 12 and 14, etc. Also, some children that come into care earlier often go into a care placement and find a really caring, loving home, because there's wonderful foster carers out there that can meet those children's needs, and they often stay settled, or they might have 1 or 2 foster care placements. The second one is that all the children, so the police told me that all the children had what they deemed to be prolific offending in the microsystem. So the microsystem is defined as immediate family members or people that live in the home. So brothers, sisters, mum, dad, and occasionally aunties and uncles, which were regularly involved in criminality. Now again, that's significant because if these children have been exposed to this criminality on a consistent basis, differential association theory, which I won't bore you with, does demonstrate that an intensive and consistent relationships with people that are pro-criminal can influence a child's development and create offending mindsets or antisocial behaviour. The third one, which again isn't true of all care experienced people, is often because these children come into care late, often because they come into care with certain anti-authority and some antisocial behaviours as a result of being exposed. So it's not a justification or it's not an explanation, but it's just the backgrounds that they're coming from. Foster placements often don't work, so they end up in residential settings. This data, which is imperative, by the way, for us to be able to challenge both the care system for these statistics, because they're still poor, challenge the criminal justice system about how they work with this vulnerable group of children or young people when they come into the criminal justice system. No matter how good research is, we always need to have our critical minds on, because from my lived experience and also from my practice experience, I've learned that actually many care experienced children and young people that end up in custody have got just as much in common in terms of experience as their non-care experienced peers that are incarcerated, as they do with care experienced people that haven't experienced these intersectional things that often contribute towards offending. The data is important to share, but it's not representative of all care experienced people. It's care experienced people that usually receive the sharp end of the care system, as an old friend Darren Coyne would have said. So that's my view, just a little bit of sharing of nuance. I would love to know your views. If you could put them in the comment section, that would be amazing, and we can interact in that way. But because we want to get the algorithms going, can you please ensure that you hit the like button? Please subscribe, because this is new podcast with new content, and make sure you hit the notification button so that when we release new content, it arrives on your device.